Alright everyone, I don't know if this is a premature reaction, but this may have been my favorite chapter of Elbaf. Elbaf right now for me is a easy 9 out of 10. As long as it sticks the landing, this may be one of my only 10 out of 10 storylines in One Piece. Right now there are 3 arcs that I consider to be 10 out of 10s for myself. That's Water 7 Enies Lobby, Sabaody Archipelago, and Marineford. Elbaf right now has all of the ingredients necessary to make it into my top 10, and if you notice, with all 3 of those storylines that I laid out, the common factor is that those storylines tended to bring the Straw Hats, and particularly Luffy, to their absolute lowest. Because that's what makes me care. Seeing the heroes deeply affected, seeing them broken, beaten, and having to get up anyway, seeing your heroes struggle is just the essence of drama, and Elbaf has been delivering that in spades. This right here, what happened this chapter, is probably my favorite defeat out of any of Luffy's defeats in the New World. To see Luffy at Imu's mercy, being put through the throes of agony, helpless and made to suffer, while Imu taunts him about the people closest to him in this world, and of course his biggest sore spot, the brother who he lost, and just seeing a completely broken Luffy who can do nothing about it. It feels like our hero is being made to experience true defeat and helplessness in a manner that we simply have not seen since Marineford. And I know people might be saying, Morge, what about Kaido? What about Kaido? This single defeat is easily far more painful than any of Luffy's losses to Kaido. Even that shocking first one that was a one-shot, because each of those defeats was simply Luffy getting knocked out and then waking back up ready to go again, completely unfazed. Meaning that while Luffy was racking up L's on the scoreboard, in terms of writing, none of those losses actually brought with them the entire purpose of having a hero lose in your story. And I'll expand on that in much greater detail in this next Tuesday's video, which is a deep dive into Luffy's character throughout the New World so far, and why this defeat was such a long time coming. But first, you can get 9 more of your favorite One Piece characters for your wall. We have 9 new dynamically illustrated One Piece legends with 9 hidden iconic moments. Get Proud Whitebeard with a hidden final stand. Get Noble Katakuri with a hidden sacrifice. Get Legendary Kuma with a hidden dance. And plenty more along with our legends from before. And this month only, for any 2 posters you can get 2 more free and Blackwing Emu for free, with the deal auto-applied at checkout. This deal is only running for this month, and Blackwing Emu will never be available again. So make sure you get your deal now by hitting the link in the description below. And without getting into too much detail, a simple distinction that I'll point out that may help people understand why I feel that this defeat actually carries a certain weight to it for Luffy's character in a manner that none of Luffy's prior New World defeats have done, is that if we look at the moment right after Kaido defeated Luffy in Wano Act 1, while the loss itself was absolute and decisive, it was portrayed in a manner that actually made Luffy look unbreakable. Because the whole point was that despite being knocked out, Kaido was shocked to see Luffy still defiantly unleashing his Conqueror's Haki spirit, even as he lay there unconscious on the ground. It was meant to showcase that this loss meant nothing to Luffy, because it doesn't matter if Kaido puts him down, Luffy's drive is so strong that he's gonna keep coming back over and over again till he eventually takes Kaido down. And that is the story of the rest of the arc. It's essentially Kaido just playing whack-a-mole with Luffy. Each time he knocks him out, Luffy just comes back up with another power-up. So compare that first loss to Kaido and how Luffy is portrayed immediately in the aftermath to what we got in this chapter. Yes, it's cool to show Luffy's Conqueror's Haki spirit still standing defiantly even when Luffy himself has been knocked to the ground. But sometimes, and this is what I've been missing throughout the New World, sometimes it's good to just have the main character lose and have them painfully drag through the experience of defeat. That is what we got this chapter. Imu twisting that knife into Luffy while Luffy is still conscious, taunting him, degrading him, making him feel how weak he is, how he is nothing like Joy Boy, reminding him of his past failures, and Luffy just has to sit there and take it. And we can see the pain, frustration, and helplessness in his expressions. If Luffy does get a power-up after all this by the end of the arc, I will be perfectly happy. I just dropped a video on that very subject. I just personally needed to see him go through an experience like this first, before a power-up actually feels meaningful to me. So just 10 out of 10, I'll say that right away, 10 out of 10 chapter, easy. And the cherry on top of all this is that we also saw Zoro actually struggling and under pressure as well against Sommers. which is a pleasant surprise and adds to the sense of tension by having Zoro's experience echo his captain's. Now, getting all the good writing and praise out of the way, this chapter was just chock full of other good moments. To start with, I think confirmation here that Usopp is going to get something really significant by the end of this arc. I think people are too fixated on the fact that Usopp hasn't gotten anything just yet, with thinking that that means that he's not going to get anything in general. To me, this suggests that whatever Usopp is set to get here, Usopp having another observation haki moment right here is just a huge tease that there's something bigger to come. Because look throughout the arc so far. Heading into the arc, Usopp said word for word, "On to Elbaf, on to my dream." So Oda is starting the arc with that in mind. Unless you think that Oda literally had zero plans for Elbaf heading in and has just made up the whole thing as he's gone along, that means that from the beginning, Oda already knew what he wanted to do with Usopp and Elbaf. We just haven't gotten to the right time for that yet. So Usopp says that right at the beginning, then at the midway point of the arc, we see Usopp standing up to Imu and challenging him straight up, because that's something we don't normally see from Usopp in arcs until after he's experienced some sort of a beatdown and then gotten back up and decided to be brave. But here, Usopp is already from the get-go acting brave even before the beatdown came, which means we're already dealing with the best version of Usopp that we've ever had in the story. So whatever's set to come is going to be bigger than anything else he's done in the story. And then finally, we got this observation haki tease. The breadcrumbs are all there. Oda knows what he's doing. He's just giving all the other Strahds their love first because he's saving the best for last. Let Robin have her reunion with Saul. Let Brook have his reunion with Shuri and everything that comes with that. Let Zoro and Sanji have their Conqueror's Haki blooms. And then let Usopp's moment be the big finisher. I just love the focus on all of the Strahds that Oda's been doing this arc. This is what I've wanted for so long in a post-time skip One Piece arc. The closest we had to this was Whole Cake Island, and that unfortunately only featured half the crew. Now beyond Usopp, we have of course Zoro and Sanji. I think it is so cool that the theory that was floating around that Imu's using all the former swords and weapons of the previous 20 kings actually turned out to be true. And more importantly, all of the weapons have special abilities, which is crazy because in One Piece, we've kind of flirted with the idea of weapons having special abilities. Some people say that that's what Enma does. It's controversial to this day. Enma, at the very least, does draw your own haki out from you, so there is that. But aside from that, unless a weapon ate a devil fruit, like Ragnar, weapons themselves have never had inherent powers, and yet here we see that that does seem to be the case. So the fact that Imu has 19 weapons to play with and can actually hand these weapons out to subordinates just opens the door for so many cool matchups and displays of abilities. And it makes Imu's powers all the more broken, because it already feels like he's kind of a do-everything man. As Shanks said in this chapter, he couldn't really imagine anyone going up to beat him. Now, does this mean that Imu is going to be the final villain of the story over Blackbeard? I think Imu is making a very strong case in the debate, but I still lean towards Blackbeard. Also, with all the Shanks teases, I do think he's going to make an appearance in this arc. I just don't know the context exactly. I feel like it's going to be something like either coming in to help Luffy drive out Imu by the end of the arc, or Shanks comes in to save Luffy, and then that gives time for Luffy to have some sort of an awakening to then help drive Imu back himself. Again, nobody's defeating Imu permanently in the storyline. It's just, can we hold out? Can we push him back enough for his quote-unquote timer to run out? And speaking of people coming in to save Luffy, we had Gaban show up at the end. Now, this is really cool because this is something I've talked about recently, which is that I do think ultimately we're going to see a large team effort against Imu, while Luffy and Loki have to wait to get back into the fray. And I talked about how, before Zoro and Sanji get their upgrades and are ready to jump in and try and stall Imu, alongside the rest of the Strahds, of course, we're gonna need some other stuff to keep Imu busy. And now the nice part is that Imu's making this a little bit easier for everyone, and that he's kind of slow-walking the whole situation with Luffy. He's not jumping to just execute him right away. He wants to draw this out a little bit, but the execution was still coming at the end of the chapter. I mentioned that other characters could jump in to help in the meantime, and Gaban was obviously at the top of that list. And what do we see at the end of this chapter? Gaban coming in, as you would hope from the next strongest available character. Really cool moment from Gaban. I am worried for him next chapter, because as strong as Gaban likely was in his prime, we've already seen him in action a couple times. And considering Gaban even 14 years younger during the Night of Herald's rampage, even back then, with Shanks helping him and all of Elbaf's strongest warriors, Gaban was pretty much helpless to do anything against Herald until Loki showed up. That suggests to me that Gaban, who's now over a decade older than back then, is very unlikely to do remotely as well as Loki in this situation, and probably not even as well as Luffy. Add in the fact that we also saw Gaban versus Sommers, and while Gaban did handle that very easily, this was Sommers without Omen or any special weapons, and it still took Gaban a little effort to put Sommers down. Like, they had had a bit of a back and forth fight before Gaban quickly finished it. I'm sure in his prime, Gaban could have just one-shot at Somers like Rayleigh did at God Valley, but all of this is just going to show that, looking at the Herald situation, looking at Somers, Gaban, while still very strong, I don't think he can hold out that long against the literal god of the One Piece universe. The one thing going in his favor is that it seems like Gaban has exceptional observation haki and future sight, probably better than Luffy and Loki, I want to say. So if the name of the game is survival and just trying to evade Inu's attacks, or stalling as long as possible, I think Gaban could last a little bit of time here. But let's wait and see. And finally, we have a really good observation from the Voice of the People, my top tier of patrons. Dice said, all the family's weapons seem to be fully realized black blades. Like once a blade has completely absorbed the will of its user, it grants it a special power maybe. Like how Kaido could still sense some of Odin in his blade, but he died before it matured. So this is one of the coolest ideas I've seen anyone say. I'm gonna start by saying I don't think every one of these blades and weapons is fully black. Like even just the sword that we saw towards the start of this chapter wasn't quite fully black, but I might be mistaken, maybe I'm misunderstanding the shading, but it appears like some of them are fully black, and that opens the door to such a cool idea. Like maybe when you've completely infused your will or spirit into a blade, it not only turns fully black, but it actually gains some additional property. Now the tricky part about this is that Zoro had Shusui for a while, which was a fully black blade, and it didn't seem to possess any sort of special ability, or maybe it did and Zoro just didn't realize how to access it. But I think this would be a really cool addition to One Piece's general power system, and it would answer the mystery as to how all of these weapons have special properties that is not typical in the One Piece universe so far. So overall, I'm giving this chapter an easy 10 out of 10. Definitely watch out for next Tuesday's video analyzing Luffy's journey throughout the New World, leading up to this point, and I will talk to you all next week.